Alrighty, so on August 1st, 2025, I published my first information package for Canadians interested in my protest at St. Paul University and at 116 Albert Street in Centertown, Ottawa. So this is similar to my subsequent information packages, letting people know that what has happened to me is common. It's happened to many First Nations grad students before me, and it is now well documented in the academic literature, something that I explained to unethical investigator and, fake lawyer, Mr. Gone. I've seen the same situation play out several times. In the 90s, I witnessed the racism administered onto my mother by UBC. And in my experience in Indigenous student services and Indigenous student government, I've seen it many, many times over in the last 20 years. I saw this conspiracy coming from 100 miles away, which explains why I documented all this. Like, I mean, it's unusual for someone to do all this. Like, if you don't see this coming, then you don't anticipate the next. Like, I knew I was going to be expelled on February 24th. You know what I'm saying? And so then it is my view that First Nations, because you know what, like this has happened to many First Nations PhDs already, and like I've said in my previous accounts on this, those PhDs did fake research. They accepted the dehumanization. They proceeded with fake research, and they even brought that research into their communities and put it on their people. Okay, and so the people in our communities are aware of this as well because they've seen it. And so then what I'm doing is something different. Instead of them, like, not blasting this off the mountaintops, I am, because First Nations youth have a right to know what really goes on before they spend all this money and time and other resources at university, especially the trajectory that they're going now with all this fascism lies and all their BS, social engineering. It is my view that I was set up for this dehumanization, sabotage, and genocide by Aurélie Lacassagne, who has known me for 15 years, and her co-conspirators. And there's a long list that I have in my mind, losers and racists and genociders that are involved in this stuff at SPU and elsewhere in academia and research. So the complaints are vague and they lack specificity. This matters because in Canada, individuals have a fundamental right to know the specific allegations against them. They also have a right to defend themselves against their accusers. So that right is rooted in principles of procedural fairness under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and provincial laws like Ontario's Occupational Health and Safety Act, which is direct relevant of direct. Those are directly relevant here. Vague accusations prevent accused from understanding the charges and mounting a proper defense. So complaint was filed indirectly, denying my right to face my accusers. So in Canadian law, including principles of natural justice, it ensures that individuals have the right to face their accusers directly, not indirectly. So when a union files a complaint on behalf of others, it creates a barrier to transparency and fairness as the accused cannot directly address or question the individuals claiming the harm. The structure also risks shielding true motivations behind the complaint, such as retaliation for my self advocacy against racism. So, three, conflicts of interest in the investigation process. A conflict of interest occurs when someone involved in a complaint has a role that could bias their actions, such as grading a student's work while simultaneously accusing them of misconduct. This violates SPU's own regulations, which require investigations to be impartial and fair. Allowing a professor to grade my work while involved in the complaint undermines the integrity of the academic and investigative process. Ignoring my evidence in the academic fraud complaint further suggests bias and a predetermined outcome. Not only was it predetermined on as of February 24th, 2025, kids, but this is the outcome that they had planned some 2 years before that in their conspiracy with Aurélie Lacassagne to recruit me for this dehumanization and erasure and genocide. Number four, withholding the investigator's report violates transparency. Why it matters. Under SBU's own regulations, I'm entitled to know the basis for the findings against me. Without withholding the investigator's report denies me the ability to understand the allegations, verify the evidence, or appeal the decision effectively. This violates procedural fairness and transparency, principles upheld in Canadian law, including the Ontario Human Rights Code and administrative law standards. Number five, retaliation for speaking out against racism. Why it matters. SPU's own regulations explicitly prohibit disciplining or punishing individuals for reporting harassment or discrimination in good faith. My complaints about racism were made in good faith as a First Nation student advocating for my human dignity. Yet the university launched investigations against me, ignored my evidence, expelled me, and has threatened to interfere with my right to protest. This pattern suggests retaliation. And intimidation. So I think that's supposed to be and without a W, which violates SPU's policies and Canadian laws protecting freedom of expression and anti-retaliation rights under the Occupation Health and Safety Act. Six, failure to address my complaints and appeal. Under SPU's own regulations, the university must review complaints impartially and take appropriate action. By dismissing my complaints without transparency and ignoring my appeal, SPU violated its own policies and my right to due process. This failure also contradicts the university's stated commitment to equity, inclusion, and particularly for First Nation students. So as a First Nation student and genocide survivor, I have a right to advocate against systemic racism without fear of retaliation. So their actions, of the university, vague complaints, conflicts of interest, withheld evidence, and ignored appeals violate fundamental principles of fairness, transparency, and justice under Canadian law. These flaws are not just a personal injustice, they reflect broader issues of systemic discrimination and silencing Indigenous voices in academic institutions. By sharing information, I aim to raise awareness and demand accountability from SPU for its failure to uphold equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I think that's it. Yeah, that's it.